funds. Show me the money. What does that mean? I'm not talking about the Jerry Maguire movie. I'm talking about my real estate practice. And everybody who's listening that might be building a luxury real estate practice or in the luxury real estate space, one of the things that is critical in this business is to make sure that you're working with vetted, qualified clients. And what I mean by that is one of the things that I've made it very, very important when I started my business about 6 years ago is that I don't like to waste time. Time is critical. It's one thing we can't get back is time. So when you're working with someone, you want to make sure that you can see that to the finish line, have a happy client, and run a successful process. And there's a lot of ways to vet clients that are buyers on the buy side. The sell side, it's a little bit easier. But one of the things that I think is very important when you think about this business is I'm a luxury real estate advisor, and I am not a tour guide, though I will sell real estate all around South Florida, and I'll show people property. One of the things that I make sure I do not do is to drive people around for 3 weeks and at the end of the day, not get a deal closed. I come across a lot of agents in the business that, might be a little bit intimidated for asking for proof of funds because maybe the end result of a potential transaction fogs the question. Some agents that are starting in the luxury real estate business might be intimidated by the question, but it's something that's paramount and a foundation to your practice. And proof of funds can come in different ways. What I ask for from agents when they're bringing someone to a property that we're listing, or if I'm bringing someone out to show them property, is I ask for a redacted financial statement. And what I mean by that is they can show me a bank checking account from a financial institution. They can show me a letter from their financial advisor, of course, with a redacted or crossed out account number. And that kind of clears the air of, okay, we mean business. We're ready to do a deal. Let's find the best property for you and let's get it done. And sometimes what happens is, some buyers, okay, if an agent comes to me, and this happened recently, where we have a property on the market, and I always ask agents who know me that's listening, I always ask for proof of funds 90% of the time, because sometimes, of course, you're working with a well-established, well-known agent, rock star agent in the industry. And at the end of the day, they do the same thing that I do, is work with vetted buyers and vetted clients, of course. But one of the things that recently happened, and this happens sometimes, an agent called and he wanted to see a property that we had listed. I think it's about $4 million. And I had asked for proof of funds, of course. And he had come back and said, my client is insulted. What is he insulted by? That we run a real practice and a real business? So at the end of the day, I asked him, have you ever gotten proof of funds from the client? No, he'll be insulted. Well, guess what? If he's insulted 90% of the time, he's probably not real. So I said, when he becomes uninsulted, and if the property's still available, we can show it to him. And that's kind of where you got to draw the line. You really have to, draw the line between, your instincts are so important when it comes to the proof of funds. And, I'll give you a real life example, which happened to me. And it happens to, I bet you everybody listening on this podcast probably has had it happen to them 1 or 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. And some people listening to this podcast may never ask for proof of funds, and they may be in that tour guide status, which hopefully this podcast will turn them from the tour guide to doing the deal. So we had a buyer come to us, and I had a long conversation with this buyer. And sometimes just by the conversation, you can kind of flush it out and have your instincts kind of take over if you kind of think they're real, if they're not. Proof of funds usually smokes them out, both on the agent side and also smokes out the client. So this buyer comes to us, and I asked for proof of funds after having a long, pretty detailed conversation, and they were able to talk a pretty good game. So I was pretty impressed. We talked about merger and acquisition in the financial industry, and people know that that's my background is the private banking business. So he talked a pretty good game. And then I asked the question because I'm not intimidated to ask for it. Before we go out and look at these properties, 7, 10, 15 million, I need to see the proof of funds. Guy took it in stride. Absolutely. No problem. So he provided a Chase private bank statement, which I'm very familiar with, showed 62 million in the checking account. 62 million. Okay, great. It's a real guy, 62 million. So we started the process. Showed him 3 or 4 properties, 8 million, 10 million. And another thing about, getting faked out is it's your reputation on the line. So if you're bringing a fake buyer around or a tour guide, that other agent is affected as well. So, there's a ripple effect with getting catfished, or which I call luxury fished. So I go out and I go to show him a property, 8 million, 10 million, 15 million, and we find a property. He loves it. So so I start negotiating on his behalf. Tell the agent, we have the proof of funds. I send it to her. She sends it to her client. Game on. So we ended up striking a deal, writing the contract. And this is about 2.5 years ago. Right, about 3 years ago, writing the contract. Contract is accepted. Woohoo, we're off to the races. I brought champagne to the house. We popped it open and drank it with the buyers on and also the seller's agent, myself on the roof, looking at the beautiful waterfront and the big yachts. Because by the way, he had a 120 that was getting built. Time for deposits. Poof, disappears. The money comes in, can't get him on the telephone, and I got duped. I got luxury fished. So at the end of the day, I learned my lesson, and I was pissed. 7 days of bullshit. I learned my lesson. And one of the things, and the way I really learned my lesson is I went into the private bank. I have a relationship, and I showed him the statement. And I said, take a look at this statement. I mean, geez, it shows 62 million bucks. So he said, the banker said to me, Billy, this is a real statement, but it's just fudge numbers. It's so easy to fudge these statements now. People just put them on a spreadsheet and throw in some numbers with technology and they look real. But the next time you question this, if it's not a letter from the bank, which typically, we get a letter from the bank, from the financial institution verifying, and then you can call the agent, the advisor. So what happened was so he said, next time you're in here, ask the client the agent to ask his client for a VOD. And I didn't know what VOD was. I said, what is that? He said, it's a verification of deposit. I said, that's interesting. So what that does is it will tell you and give you the ability to confirm with the financial institution if they have the capabilities and the liquidity at a certain asset level held in the bank. And that is a holy grail for me now if I have a question about a statement. I just turned down a showing recently. A guy sent me proof of funds. It was a snapshot of the back of a money market account and then the back of his credit card. Doesn't work. So let's just get to let's get to the core of this. And what I think is for everyone that's listening, that's in this business or looking to build their business or wants to stop wasting, maybe valuable time, because the time that you waste, valuable time that you waste is time that you could be putting towards something more positive in your business. So one time waster, if you eliminate them right at the onset, could create 5 new prospects or 5 new qualified clients. So imagine that month that you waste, or 2 months or 3 months or 5 months or 6 months, you never asked for proof of funds. If you had asked for proof of funds with someone that was qualified, could equate to maybe 5 or 6 deals where you're wasting time with one that's not qualified. So it's very, very important. So I think that's a pivotal, fundamental core practice everyone should use is the proof of funds. And don't be intimidated by asking the question. a real buyer, a businessman, an entrepreneur, a businesswoman, when you ask that question, they will appreciate that you're running a business. And I think that is very, very, very important. One last example, and it's happened. This was another. This I had actually a listing where an agent brought a buyer, and I kept on demanding that in order to get going, we needed the proof of funds. And this buyer actually reached out to my client without me knowing and started dialogue. And I said to my client, this guy is fake. No one cancels their private plane 2 times because they couldn't get fuel to the plane. And then another time, the pilot didn't show up. I mean, come on. That's bullshit. So I called it out. The guy was fake. The agent wasted probably 2 months of her own time. The guy never bought anything. I sold the business to another buyer, but it was another lesson that I learned. I mean, I had learned the lesson, but it's just another example that these situations do exist, and just do not be intimidated by asking the question, and it'll help you grow your business and eliminate working with fantasy buyers. So at the end of the day, there's one of the things that you have to remember is don't be afraid to ask the question. Don't be afraid to step up to the plate and ask them to show you the money, because it's super important, and it'll save you time, and it'll create more powerful relationships with other agents, because when you come to the table, they know you have them and they know that you can execute in business. And don't be afraid. Don't be intimidated. Just ask the question. And if the client's real, they'll provide the information needed to take it to the next level. And anybody that's in the luxury real estate business, they know that monetizing buy-side transactions is very, very difficult. In the last 2 years, we've had this crazy frenzy in the market across the country, and there's a lot of agents that got into the business, and the phone rings and they pick it up and they run out and they have somebody buy a property in 24 hours. That is over. Now the real work comes in. So monetization of buy-side transactions is not easy. And to differentiate your practice from the ones that don't monetize will keep you in the business and have longevity to your career. So one of the things I think you should definitely take advantage of when looking to, monetizing the buy side is working with agents on the other side of the deal that know how to bridge a deal, know how to bridge the gap. And what I say by that is, dealing with agents that understand the process, that know how to close a deal, and don't be afraid to network with that other agent. Don't be afraid for that client to talk to your client. I see this all the time. It's amazing where, in this business, people, agents think like, oh, you can't have a conversation with my client. Well, guess what? You can talk to my client. If we're trying to close a deal and you have information that's valuable, that client wants to hear it, right? So I'm all for it. I've worked with, I've had deals where, I try to bring my expertise into the room, and, the agent's like, shh, I'll talk to the client. Well, for me, I think it's working in coordination with the agent, whether it's buy side or sell side, as a team, and it adds more value to the process for the client, right? The more information the client gets from both sides, the more of an educated decision he could make, which adds value to the process. So, and it all starts again with the proof of funds, right? Eliminating the guessing game if someone has the assets to do a transaction is super, super important. So one of the things I think you should totally remember if you're building your luxury real estate business is that agents that are successful will help you. Listen to them. I ask agents all the time that call me, have you gotten proof of funds? And, the answer is, well, I know they have it. They're qualified. And then I say, well, how long have you known them? They say, well, I've shown them 4 or 5 houses, or I've seen their house that they're putting on the market. Well, I guess so. At the end of the day, that really doesn't matter. So very critical to get those documents early on. And it'll save you relationships with other agents. Like I said before, that's the kind of stuff that will, you come back to the table in 6 months from now after you wasted a top producer's time or any other luxury agent. And they're going to say, oh, shit. Last time I went through this process with them, it was a waste because at the end of the day, the people didn't have the dough and it was a waste of time. So, you got to be careful because it's not only, it's your relation, it's your reputation, but it's also the ability of that agent that wants to do business with you, because I think that's important too. And I figured at the end of each podcast, I'd read a question that I got on social media, and you can DM me at nash.billy on Instagram or send me, everybody knows my cell phone or my website. You can send me a message and I'll answer your questions. So this question comes in, it's actually interesting. And this agent says, Jason from California, what does a good week look like to Billy Nash? So a good week to me looks like, of course, servicing and learning and reading all week long on building a better business, staying in touch with loyal clients, continuing to build on relationships with existing clients, and always having, that potential new deal that could be out on the horizon. So we had a new listing, which is going to go live actually tomorrow for just about almost $4 million. And then we're going to shoot photography on a new listing down in the Florida Keys, which would be probably around, we haven't priced it yet, but it'll be upwards towards 10 million. But those were seeds that were planted. So I always make sure that, a good week is that I'm seeing the seeds that I've planted starting to grow sprouts. And that's the key. So I hope everybody has a great week. They do deals. If you like this podcast, go to Apple or Spotify, give me 5 stars and a great rating. I look forward to talking to everybody again on episode 3. Have a great week, and let's go out and do some deals.